Follow me as I tell you a wonderful story about a magic trick. One night, just after Jeffrey's parents had finished putting him to bed, they went to the living room to unwind from a long day of having a 4-year-old. Suddenly, they heard the child wailing from his room, and realized they would have to go up and check on him. They rushed into the child's room with all the gusto of Noodle on a no-bones day, and found that their son had, somehow, managed to swallow a nickel. The boy was convinced that he was going to die, and no amount of persuasion could deter his stance. Then, the father had a bright idea. He went over to his son and palmed a nickel that he somehow had conveniently placed in his pocket. He leaned over the distraught 4-year-old and pulled the nickel from his son's ear and said, "Here you go. I got it out." The boy was ecstatic and amazed. So were the parents, as they thought they could finally put the young boy back to bed. This was really starting to cut in on their TV time. But before they could even start to put the boy back in bed, Jeffrey grabbed the coin from his father's hand and swallowed it like the last M&M. "Do it again!" he cheered, and the parents realized that they were going to miss that new episode of NCIS tonight. So now we're going to analyze this story in terms of the story arc, which has 5 components. So the first part of the story arc is the exposition. This is when the audience is introduced to the main characters and the setting of the story. This is when you are exposed to Jeffrey, his parents, and learned about where the story was taking place. The next part of the story arc is the rising action. This is when a conflict is introduced or begins to, rise. We saw this when Jeffrey started to cry and the parents were upset because another night was ruined by a child eating a nickel. Now, the climax is when the story is at a turning point and tensions are at their highest. This is when Jeffrey's father decides to perform the world's most regretted magic trick. After this, we come to the falling action. This is when tensions are decreased, and the story is being set up for the ending. See this happy little boy and his elated parents? Well, they're in the falling action. And here we have the resolution, which is, simply put, the end. This is generally when the conflict is solved, and the story comes to a close. So, for Jeffrey's parents, the resolution is when they realize they really shouldn't let their child around any nickels whatsoever. And that's a story arc.
Created using Powtoon.